What is going on, everyone? We are going to be diving into everything that you have seen from the Buffalo Bills in this first week of NFL free agency. But first, our guys at Handsome Jack.
Broadcasting live to Bills Mafia worldwide with Greg Tompsett and Aaron Quinn.
Welcome to the NFL. Doesn't matter what's happened before today. Today's a brand new day. It's a brand new season.
Your number one podcast for objective Buffalo Bills coverage. No matter where you are, we got you covered.
Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. You are joining your host, Greg Tompsett, along with my partner in crime, Aaron Quinn. Aaron, how we doing?
Yo, what up, Greg? Did you get your droid down in Florida?
I didn't. My flight got canceled. It ruined everything, but
Yeah,
you know,
it happens. Not everything. I saw you drinking, having a good time, eating churros. So it didn't ruin everything.
Yeah, correct. I ended up having, in hindsight, I wish I had switched around what day I would have a chance to do what, but I was down in Florida at Disney for a convention for work and had a little window of time to go wander around last night and have a little time to myself and had the fun of traveling. Today, traveling nowadays is a constant headache, but it went relatively smooth today, and I'm here and I'm back and we're on the show.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if we were going to get you tonight. I'm glad we did. I would have been happy to talk to Chris. Our producer down there, would have been happy to talk to Chris. But excited. This is one of the shows I look forward to the most. You know, we don't really get that break. The season ends, we jump right into free agency, and then we get to pause a little bit here and react while you get into this sort of second wave coming up here. So I was excited to talk to you. It's one of the ones I look forward to the most, reacting to the first wave, not just Bills, but league wide. And so I'm glad you made it. I'm glad that your trip was good and that you came back safe.
Yeah, I think that we braced ourselves that it wasn't going to be a bunch of splashy things this week, and it hasn't been. There have not been a ton of big splashy things, but still some nice things, some good, productive things that we'll go through. But it certainly hasn't been the kind of big moves that we've seen in some of the years past. So that always impacts things.
Yeah, but I think that's a good thing to remember where this team is at, even though, Greg, we've talked about it, even though the last taste we got in our mouth wasn't great. And really the last three games, the taste of the last three games, even though they won two of them, wasn't a great taste in our mouths about how this team left. But I think seeing maybe what fans feel like is the lack of movement, but seeing how it compares to the rest of the league. And I know you've got a chart to bring up later about really where teams are at. The run it back mentality, which we talked about, was a real possibility here, of that mostly this would be a run it back. Maybe you lose a couple guys and switch out some pieces, but ultimately your team doesn't feel like it improved on paper in the offseason, but you're still going to be a top 5 NFL roster, an NFL team when it's all said and done, when you fill this roster back out. And so that's where it feels like to me today, talking to you, where this free agency was at. Like, yeah, you did kind of switch over some new stuff, maybe improved in some small areas a little bit, but you were already improving on a great team. And this goes to my brother. I bring him up a lot on this podcast. He's a Bears fan. They probably had a massive leap here this week in improvement of what that team is going to be this year. But you're going from the bottom 3 teams in the league to maybe a top average team fighting for a wild card spot. So you're going to see a greater variance in their improvement, where the Bills, there isn't a lot of variance to get much better. That we want to see them get over that hump, but it doesn't require big splash free agent moves or anything like that. And so we should have been a little bit probably more prepared for what Brandon Beane told us to expect.
Yeah, and I think that we'll bring it up. We have the chart from Kevin Cole, who actually I think is going to be joining us on the show next week. So we'll see what else happens between now and then and kind of update some of his information. But Kevin will be jumping on with us next week to kind of review exactly what we're talking about here. But I'll bring that up in a bit. And I think that I want to give a shout out to our guy, Chris Chouse, who does our Cover One Fantasy show. He made the analogy that, it is really impressive that the Bears have gone from the ground floor to the 6th floor. And that's a huge jump, but it's a 20-story building. It's great that you've gone from probably the least talented roster in the entire NFL to like, oh, look, you got a bunch of NFL caliber good players,
Correct.
but it's still a long journey to where you are. And like, is it annoying that the Bills were already on the 17th or 18th floor and all we did was probably kind of stay on the 17th or 18th floor? Like, does that feel anticlimactic? Yeah, but we're still really good. Like,
it's good to be up in the
it's still
penthouse.
nice to be,
Yes.
you know, yeah. Would I love to be like literally on the top floor? Sure, I would. I would love to just make more and more moves to get all the way there. But it's, you know, we're still really good. We'll get into that a little bit later.
Yeah, and maybe the teams that are up in the penthouse right now, maybe they're moving down a floor or two.
Yeah.
Who knows? We'll see.
So we'll go through some of that in a bit here, but let's start with some of the Bills news. Since the last time we talked this weekend, there was a really fun announcement. Our guy Matt Milano agreed to a 2-year, $28 million extension. The important part of that was that he reduced his 2023 cap hit by a little over $6 million. That was, you know, in all honesty, the extension was kind of window dressing. It just looks nice. It actually doesn't impact much of anything. The reduction in his cap hit was the exact same amount that we could have just restructured anyways.
Right.
In reality, what we did was we took the 2 void years that were added when we restructured him last year and made them real years at market competitive rates. That's all we did. We gave him money and said, hey, you want to know what? When those 2 void years come up, we bet we'd still like to have you on the team. Why don't we make those real years? And in doing that, we'll also restructure your deal this year. But it sounds nicer to do that, to say it's a extension than a restructure. So Matt Milano reduced his 2023 cap hit, added on 2 more years, which he was already under contract in 2023 this coming year and next year in 2024. We now officially have him for 2025 and 2026. Matt Milano, all-pro linebacker, going to be here for a long time.
Yeah, and very exciting news to see that you're going to have him locked up. But immediately, it kind of was a gut punch in my offseason plans of really wanting Tremaine Edmunds back on this team. Once I saw that news, I just knew, even though like I had probably had a flicker of hope the next day or two, but I knew from that moment that they weren't planning on paying Tremaine Edmunds the type of contract that you were projecting for us, where we don't pay him a whole lot up front, but we pay him down the road, because you're not going to pay the 2 linebackers that long, that type of money.
Yeah, it was a core element of my projection.
Yeah. And so that it was exciting. It was a bit bittersweet, right? Exciting that, all right, well, at least they're going to go all in on Milano. They're going to keep him. You're going to keep a big core part of this defense for a long time here. But it was pretty much the beginning of saying goodbye to Tremaine Edmunds there. So you knew it was coming. So it was a bit of a bittersweet announcement, but happy now. And we heard from Brandon Beane today saying that, you know, dispelling any of the rumors, something that I kind of liked the idea a little bit of maybe Milano, with the lack of Edmunds here, becoming more positionless linebacker and having him move into some of those responsibilities. Beane pretty much squashed that today. He didn't answer who that responsibility of Edmunds is going to go to, but it will not be going to Matt Milano according to their plans.
Yeah, and I think, you know, Eric did a really nice thread showing Matt Milano has the capability to do it. Now, is he your stereotypical middle linebacker build? No, he's not, but he has the instincts. He was capable of it. That doesn't necessarily mean that it was the most likely thing. You know, I think we had put it out there that, hey, keep your guys' eyes open. It's possible. It's easier to replace a weak side linebacker. It's easier to find that. So maybe it makes sense to play Milano,
or that you
there.
had Bernard, who's a little bit undersized, similar, that maybe just the personnel that you have on your team makes sense long term for that. Like, I can see paths to it.
Yeah. And you know, so we wanted to be open to that idea. I think maybe we were even a little intrigued by it, because I think it gave you some additional flexibility, or like you had talked about, maybe a little bit of the scheme shift we'd kind of been rooting for. But again, I think that Brandon Beane didn't make those comments today without talking to Sean McDermott and having that thought process and strategy in mind. So
it's
Matt
Jack
Milano's
Campbell at 2027 or bust.
So, well, we'll get to that here in a little bit. I don't want to take away
we got
from
time.
all the other.
We got time.
You know, yeah, I do think that we see another signing there. You know, right now, obviously, it's Balin Spector, it's Tyrel Bernard, it's Tyrel Dodson, it's those kind of guys. I feel strongly the Buffalo Bills starting middle linebacker is not currently on the roster. So where that goes, you know, obviously a lot of fans have talked about Bobby Wagner. he can't cover in space anymore. He's still a very good run defender. He's still got great instincts. He could platoon with a Tyrel Bernard. Platooning on defense is hard. It's
Yeah.
really tough
You
to
can
know
get real
when.
stuck. Yeah.
Well, and there's, defenses pass on first down now. Like first and second down isn't run downs, and then third down is a passing down. That's not real anymore. Teams pass on first down all the time. So it's hard to know when would you play him if you know it's just run downs and early down work, and then when would you swap in a different guy. So it sounds good in theory. It's really hard to platoon in the modern NFL.
We'll get into it in a second. Of getting back your safeties makes me feel like you
Yes.
could do a little bit more. I talk about it on the offensive line all the time, right? Like hiding that 1 weak link. If we have 1 weak link in that back 7, you can hide that with now that we're retaining, all pro safeties. So maybe I've been out on the idea of Wagner. I think that lack of athleticism where he's at is almost a detriment that a good offensive coordinator is going to attack that and pick on that in the passing game. So that's one thing I don't love. I agree with you that I don't know that I'm as absolute that it's not starting. I said it on our free agency show and our wish list show on defense that I could see a real scenario where they're more comfortable going with Bernard or Dodson with platooning in a Bernard or bringing him along slowly than maybe we're comfortable with. And so I still think they're higher on him than I'd like. I think they are shopping this market, but there's not a lot out there. And we could talk about that a little bit here too. But
I think I put together a list of guys that I think are legitimate possibilities. I know some people see names like Miles Jack and things like that. I don't think that's a real possibility. He can't play anymore. Drew Tranquil is the one name that if you want to align someone who has a lot of similar boxes as 2 other players we're about to talk about here tonight, young, on the upward trend, limited opportunity where they were coming from. It is just coming into their own as a first-time starter. Drew Tranquil from the Chargers checks a lot of those boxes. The Chargers also signed Eric Kendricks. So I think that he's available and going to switch teams. I think that he also was a guy that we thought was kind of a value signing and not like a big splash signing. So he's a player that is not going to get the fan reaction. If we send Bobby Wagner, all of your friends on Facebook are going to be super excited.
Happy fans.
It is going to be, people are going to be super excited because Bobby Wagner won a Super Bowl and he is a Hall of Fame level
and
player.
at one point was like for a 5-year, 8-year stretch was the best middle linebacker.
The best middle linebacker in the NFL. Like he's awesome. He's not that guy anymore. He's not terrible. He's not trash. He's better than Terrell Dodson and Bale Inspector and Terrell Bernard probably. But in coverage, he doesn't have it in space anymore. He just does not have that movement ability in space. So Drew Tranquil is the guy that is not going to get a ton of, slam dunk high fives everywhere. He's not a name that people are going to go crazy about, but he actually could play all 3 downs. He can cover. He is young, on an upward trajectory. He's there. There's a couple other Band-Aid guys that might even make a little more sense. Anthony Walker from Cleveland, Deion Jones also, Denzel Perriman, Devin Bush. Those are all guys who I think are going to be like cheap 1-year deals who are probably a little more trustworthy than the guys we have on the roster. Wouldn't stop you from drafting somebody. I know, Simpson out of Clemson and Jack Campbell are going to get a ton of talk. We'll talk about that as it gets closer to the draft. I expect them to add someone between now and the draft. I'd love if it's Drew Tranquil. I don't really think it's going to be Bobby Wagner. I think it's Band-Aid guy, and then we'll see who they add between now and then is my guess.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. It's definitely going to be a transition for this defense. We've seen Tremaine Edmunds be that large physical freak figure in the middle of this defense. I'm interested to see, I talked about how this could be potentially a big hole, but I was also making that assumption that it was Tremaine Edmunds and Jordan Poyer leaving in the same offseason in the middle of that defense. So again, retaining Poyer makes it a little bit more palatable in terms of the impact I think it'll have on the field. But I am interested to see how the strategy of whoever they put there, you've said it before, Tremaine Edmunds can do more than most linebackers can do. And we ask him to do more than most linebackers can do. But that doesn't mean some guys can't do 70% of what we ask them to do, right? And so it'll be interesting if they keep that middle linebacker position the same and just hope that they can get a guy that can do a percentage, or if they really dial it back, put more on other guys' plates. Because a lot of what we love about Milano and that success Milano has had has been playing with Tremaine Edmunds, and the way Edmunds plays allows Milano to be a little bit more free of a matchup type linebacker role. I'm interested to see how the domino effects, or if there is any.
Well, I mean, maybe it's a little bit of both. Maybe we do get more of that, not scheme shift, but a little difference of what you reference without calling Milano the middle linebacker. Maybe it is shifting some of those coverage responsibilities, some of those middle of the field zone responsibilities to Milano, even though he still would technically be his normal position.
Yeah,
day-to-day.
we're blitzing Bernard and putting Milano in coverage, and we're just calling them different positions. Yeah.
So some of the next moves here, I'm going to lump together some of the salary cap moves. And one of the folks in the chat was asking here, I thought only 51 counted towards the cap, but Bean made a practice squad comment in his presser. So in the offseason, when there's a 90-man roster, you only count the top 51 because no team could be under the salary cap if you counted all 90 contracts on the roster. And any of the 90 could make the team. We see it all the time. We've seen surprise special teams linebackers and different guys that were probably the 82nd guy going in end up making it. So you don't know who out of the 90 are going to make it, but you can only count so many. So the rule of 51 is only in the offseason. Yeah. Once you get to cut down day, from that day forward, the 53 players on the roster count. But also every time you call up players from the practice squad or a guy gets injured and goes on injured reserve, you have to pay the guys you call up. So you have to have more cap space for each of those weekly transactions when you call a guy up or you sign a guy or you activate a guy. Each of those, they get that game check, and that 1/17th of a minimum salary counts. So you need money. So Brandon Bean always likes to have at least like $3, but usually $5 to $6 million in available money
buffer
going into the year as a buffer, because you need to function. That's not for trades. That's not for anything outside of there. That's just to function and to like call guys up to the practice squad, to sign guys when they go on injured reserve, replacements when you put guys on injured reserve. All of those are to function as a franchise. So that's what the rule of 51 is in the off season. In the regular season, it's 53, but it's never the same 53 guys. So you need money to sign those guys.
So speaking of money, talk about some of those restructures, cap moves that were made, and then give us where are we currently at heading into this, what we would call second wave here of free agency. Although, did a first wave ever really?
Yeah, we added new players. That counts. It's a small.
It was a weird first wave for the whole
wave.
NFL. Really.
Like a kiddie pool wave. We had a kiddie pool wave. So the first handful, we had 2 pay cuts. The agents are always going to leak it as restructures, but they were pay cuts. Tim Settle took a pay cut. Nyheim Hines took a pay cut. Both those guys got their contracts restructured to convert some over to bonuses and to reduce their cap hit, or else they weren't going to stay on the team. So we're glad both of them did. I think both you and I are in favor of those guys being on the roster, but neither of them at the number they were at. We fixed that. Both of them reduced their cap hit, still on the roster. We're good to go. We then did 3 significant restructures that were actual restructures, not pay cuts. That was Josh Allen, Von Miller, and Stephon Diggs. Those 3 just by themselves created $37 million in cap space. That's what really we were already over by 19 million. So that put us pretty far from over the cap to now having the room to do some of the moves we're going to talk about. The moves for Settle and Nyheim Hines were an extra maybe 2 million more on top of that. But those 2 got to 40. That created about $20 million in usable space. The Milano one was another 6, so they were doing it as they went. It was kind of a little bit up, a little bit down. But that in general gave us the room to do all the things we are now. And at the end, I'll wrap it up. Right now, we have probably about $10 million in cap space to work with, which means usable space when you talk about the draft picks, because you need like 2.5. It's actually 2.7 million
plus that 5
draft picks, the 5 to 6 to work with. You probably have like $2 or $3 million to work with. And you still could do a little bit. You could extend Daquan Jones, which we would like to see. That
Isaiah
would be
McKenzie's coming up.
You could release Isaiah McKenzie. Brandon Beane did talk about that in his presser that
I mean,
decision
they got to
is
make a
coming here.
decision. Yeah.
That could be about $2.2 million they could save. You also could restructure Trey White or Deion Dawkins to create another like almost $10 million between the two of them. So they have some options for if they want to do something.
Pull coupons if you need
correct.
them.
Like if somebody presents themselves like, oh, we didn't think we could get Odell Beckham Jr. and all of a sudden you can. Jerry Jeudy wants to come in. Something like that. They could figure out those things to do it. All right. So now we've retained Matt Milano. We've done pay cuts for Settle and Hines. We've restructured Josh Allen, Von Miller, Stephon Diggs. We then start to retain some guys. So we hear right as it opens, Sam Martin, punter, 3 years. It's like $1.6 million. It makes him like he's like the 12th highest paid punter in the league. It's perfect. He's here for 3 years. We don't have to worry about it. I don't care.
Give me a completely average punter. We don't have to talk about a lot. That's all.
He's a good holder. He puts the ball down in the right spot every single time. He actually can do a little bit of directional punting. He can
some
do
nice
a coffin
punts,
corner
man.
here or there, but whatever. I don't care.
Yeah. I don't want to punt that much.
Yep. Same idea. Tyler Matakevich came back on a cheap deal.
Yeah.
I'm perfectly fine with that. We're going to have somebody play as a core special teamer. It might as well be him.
There's going to be more core special teamers on this team still than Bills fans are going to like.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm Bills fans.
Yeah. I am too. Like I wouldn't build a roster necessarily the same way the Bills tend to, but they're going to continue to do this. The reaction when these first signings came out was, I understand people want the Bills to do something fantastic, right? Like I knew we were going to make some kind of move that would get me excited, but I knew it wasn't going to be a big splash. Yeah. But when these first ones came out, it's like, dude, they have to fill a roster. They're going to have to get 90 guys together to go to camp. Like this is really still a thing. And people are just so mad about how they prioritize the special teams first, but those are easy contracts to get done and just get these guys back.
It's whatever. It is what it is. They're Cam Lewis was also in the mix there. We brought back Cam.
That
Lewis
one annoyed
me.
Deal. I was annoyed as soon as Cam was back.
Those are guys that are coming back. I would say Martin and Matakevich are probably roster locks that are going to make the team. Cam Lewis, I think, is likely, but not necessarily a roster lock.
He might be the next roster cockroach.
Hey, we have had a couple over the years.
I mean, he's teetered on being waived, and he just keeps finding his way back.
Yeah. God bless him. Good for him. Before we saw our first edition, we then saw the news break that we lost Tremaine Edmunds. Tremaine Edmunds signed what now is a complete outlier at the line. Like every other linebacker deal has been like $7 million or so.
Yeah.
Tremaine Edmunds gets $18 million per year from the Chicago Bears. Tons of guarantees all up front. Gets to be a free agent again at like the age of 28.
I was going to say 20 years old.
He's going to get another huge deal before this is done. But, God bless him. He got the huge deal he was looking for. I don't know where or when the Bills dropped out. Like, were they in up to 14, 15, 16? I don't know where they dropped out. But, $18 million a year is exactly what I projected. I projected 17.5 with 52.5 guaranteed. It ended up 18 million per year with 50 million guaranteed. It was exactly the kind of deal I thought, but I won't lie, I was kind of hoping it would come from the Bills.
I wanted this. I understand the logic of this being the one that you get out on in terms of where the roster's at, where you've invested money. I understood where people were saying in terms of where you need to be spending money going forward, but I think this was a great deal for the Bears. He'll never live up to this contract. Bears fans are going to have the same type of frustration Bills fans had. I think the coaches are very happy right now. Eberflus is very excited with what they matched him up with TJ Edwards too, right?
From the Eagles.
I think it's going to be a nice linebacking core. I think he fits this defense really well. He's going to do the things he did in Buffalo there for them. And he's going to be the guy they can immediately, this is a guy that's a captain of a team that's gone deep into the multiple playoff runs. Like he's got good experience at a young age. It's a huge thing for a team that's trying to change their culture and change their defense. So I do think it's a win for the Bears, even though that contract's going to be tough. And I don't think he'll live up to it. I will say, I thought I was going to feel losing him was going to be like devastating to me, but I really don't feel that way now, Greg. Like I'm bummed. I think I think his best football is definitely ahead of him. I think he's
Sure.
going
I
to
think these next 2 years he's going to look good.
He's got some ascending, a play coming for him here the next couple of years. And so I'm bummed that we're not going to get in on that investment that you put into this kid. But I'm happy for him. I'm excited for him. But geez, I did feel like I would be a little bit more torn up about this and worried about what the defense was going to do. But today I'm sitting here thinking, okay, maybe they can hide Tyrel Dodson for a little bit and work in Bernard in some certain packages and things like that.
Let's not go that far yet, but I agree. I'm okay with them not paying top of the market money to 2 linebackers at the same time. I said that this entire time, that in a vacuum, I wanted to keep Tremaine Edmunds because the draft, develop, and re-sign strategy is what we should be doing. I understand that, hey, maybe it's not gonna work with the way that we're structured and the way that we're set up, but having that much money tied up at linebacker is going to be a challenge. And Aaron's so upset about it that he dropped off and left the show. But being able to be in that kind of spot was going to be difficult. I know that with the deal that was given out, it's a ton. Like Aaron said, it's going to struggle to live up because he doesn't have the splash plays. I think that what Bears fans are going to realize is he is going to raise the floor of that defense a ton. He's going to make it a much more sound, consistent defense. The stuff he can take away in the middle of the field and the coverage ability is going to be big. But they're going to expect huge flash plays and big blow up hits and stuff like that. That's not his game. That's not what he does. So we'll see where it goes. I think he's going to do well. Alex here, while we're waiting for Aaron to reappear, do we get a compensatory pick for Edmunds? So me explaining the compensatory pick formula would be an entire show. The easiest, simplified, quick version is teams are only eligible for a compensatory pick if you lose more total free agents than you sign. So even though it seems silly, Case Keenum signing on another team, which we'll get to in a moment here, helps our compensatory pick formula. With right now, we've signed 2 and we've lost 2. So right now we are not eligible for compensatory picks. If Devin Singletary signs with another team, Jordan Phillips signs with another team, Shaq Lawson signs for another team, it's possible those guys, if they sign for enough money, could cancel out. And then if we have a net loss and we lose more guys than we sign, we would get a 3rd round pick for Tremaine Edmunds, because the $18 million a year is going to be a 3rd round pick if it qualifies. But it only matters if we lose more guys than we sign. So as an example, we could tomorrow find out Devin Singletary signs with the Falcons, and boom, we got a 3rd round pick back. But then if we sign Drew Tranquill to replace Edmunds at linebacker, we'd back to 0, and we would not have any comp picks. So it's a bonus if they have them. I don't know that we should turn down having the right kind of guy to do that, but if it happens, we could go that route. So
it does not seem that Brandon Beane particularly cares as much about comp picks as Twitter. Like, in terms of, every year we look at the guys that get cut and say these are the guys we need to attack, and he almost never does.
Yeah, and he had that opportunity. We could have gone after different players than what we did, which we're going to get to in just a moment here. Mm-hmm. And we could have gone that route and built a reasonable team just out of released players and got the comp picks for them, but it's not the route we went. And the reason is the guys who are available are usually older, usually injured, usually coming off of a bad contract, and that's why they got released. And instead, we did lean towards specifically young, up-and-coming players who potentially have some value coming back, and the first one of those is Connor McGovern. So Connor McGovern is a 25-year-old guard from the Dallas Cowboys. had just gotten his first chance to start 6'5", 318, talked very specifically about how he keeps himself very fit. He likes to weigh 318 on weigh-in day on Thursdays and play a 323. He likes to eat a nice healthy chunk on Friday and Saturday. Plays his games there and then it works out, and that's the entire run of how it goes. So, it's in a position where I think he has upside. He's a guy, I think he started 15 games for the Cowboys last year at right guard or at left guard because Zach Martin was at right guard. So I think that's where they intend to play him this year. That was similar to the Matt Milano discussion. There was some discussion of should Bates move back to right guard or back to left guard and McGovern over to right guard. Last year, both guys played entire seasons in that spot. Connor McGovern played the entire year at left guard. Ryan Bates played the entire year at right guard. They're going to stay there. It makes sense.
Yeah, I thought there was a little bit of an overreaction to him saying that, and that people are like, "Oh, but Bates is worse here, and he played worse here, and like they need to be playing where they're best at." I think that they have that voice in the room when they're talking to the coaches, and that they're going to be fine. Bates actually played fine in comparison at both right guard and left guard. And we were talking about this in the Cover One DM group. My big thing is you can just go and look at PFF and see where a guy lined up and then take his grades or something like that. You got to, if you're going to say a guy played poorly in comparison to years past, you got to look for context as to why. And I know for me, if I'm not a fan of a team, being a fan of the Bills, I can look at Bates this year and say, hey, maybe why did he play a little bit worse? Well, last year he was playing next between Mitch Morse and Deion Dawkins. This year he's playing between Mitch Morse and Spencer Brown. And if you know anything about offensive line, there's a lot that goes into that and passing that back and forth.
And Grant Turner here saying, how about we have Bates stay at one spot for once?
For sure.
That's part of this. That's part of this is that, hey,
he's still a young guy too.
Entire year of him working at right guard. Let's not flip him around again.
Yeah, he's also a young player. Yeah, I have no problems with that. McGovern signing here is one I like a lot, though, Greg. It was totally not on my radar at all. Actually, I think I am going to grade myself pretty poorly when I self-scout my free agency process this year because I really missed out on some guys that the Bills were actually in on that were fits and that now I see the fits. And I totally missed these guys in free agency. And the scouting department and I were not in sync this year like we have been in past years, but this one seems like a fit. And I encourage everyone after, of course, watching this show, go into our Cover One YouTube channel, check out the video that Eric did. It's like a 20-minute video just breaking down some of Connor McGovern's tape from last year. And the thing that stood out to me was the repetitive use of words like athleticism, balance. He continued to talk about the balance this guy has, and the
key things at fullback. That he can move around well.
Really nice athleticism. Where it really showed for me in this video was the ability to anchor and recover and the type of athleticism to get beat, but then recover. And he showed a couple reps where this happened. And that's the big thing that to me was missing for really Spencer Brown on the edge. But John Feliciano a couple of years ago, and then this year with Saffold was that minute they got beat, the play was over and that Josh was going to get pressure. It's having somebody that can get beat, reset, and anchor and maintain their balance is going to be very big for maintaining the right type of depth for Josh in the pocket. I don't know if he'll be that guy or not. I think he'll be an upgrade just in terms of age and being an ascending player over Saffold being an older player that's descending. That in itself is a bit of an upgrade, so I'm excited there. But this could have the potential to be buying in low on a guy that could be heading into a right path for an above average interior offensive lineman, which is exactly what I've been looking for the Bills for years. I'm hoping this is the type of guy. He's got all the stuff in terms of athleticism and having put the production to tape. So I understand why they bought in.
Yeah, it makes total sense. Played with Bates at Penn State. High relative athletic score, checks so many of the boxes. Are hit free agency at 25, really only at his first year with a chance to start. You could potentially be buying in on a player that still has significant upside, and that's just not that common when you're out there. So I like the idea that they could be able to go with further upside. And I know Anthony Prohaska talked about when he dove into some of his film, seeing reps where he's holding up against Javon Hargrave and guys like that goes a long ways. That he's that kind of player that was able to, hold up against some really tough interior defensive linemen in the NFC East. You're talking about, you look at what Deron Payne just signed for, what Javon Hargrave just signed
Mhm.
for, and Dalvin Tomlinson and Leonard Williams, and like the interior defensive linemen in that division are really, really good. So he's used to that level of competition. That certainly gives me a little bit of confidence of
Yeah.
what he can do, and I think that we should feel good about it.
And in the press conference today, which if you haven't seen it, I think everyone should go watch all the guys today. It was a good slate of press conferences, but his specifically felt real processy, right?
Yeah.
You would mention him talking specifically about his weight gain, but then he also talked about some of the what did he call it? Basically where he's at in his offseason. He hasn't had a full offseason, right? He came in as a rookie, then they had the COVID offseason, and there was a bunch of transition there for him. Went through some rehab type stuff, and then getting a full off season and saying where he's at in comparison, and he just kind of talking about the off season process of refining your craft and getting better. It just screamed all those things that Sean McDermott's. I think people take what Sean McDermott and Brandon Bean say about the process the wrong way. What they talk about is how you carry yourself as a pro and how you prepare yourself. And when he was kind of talking about all the stuff off the field he does to prepare himself, it just made me think like he's checking all those boxes, like you said, including being the guy that gets the process of what it takes to be an NFL player.
Yeah. So I think plenty of upside there. Looks like he's going to be a starting left guard right from day one. I think that that's what we were looking for. Maybe not the name that we targeted, like you said, maybe some self scouting on our side. Some of the names we were looking at, I think that he makes a lot of sense in hindsight, and maybe should have been more in on him. And here's a player that this next one was one that I was interested in last year when he re-signed to go back to New Orleans. Deonte Harty. So Deonte Harty is a diminutive receiver from New Orleans, is the kind of guy that I think, you and I have been relatively harsh on what Isaiah McKenzie has been able to do. This is the guy that fans think Isaiah McKenzie is. He's 5'6", 170. He is crazy fast, like legitimately one of the fastest guys in the NFL fast in his game speed. How he's able to move on the field, has been an all-pro kick return or an all-pro returner, multiple time Pro Bowl returner. Actually had a couple really solid seasons. Last year he got turf toe, tried to gut through it for a little bit, ended up missing like 13 games. Didn't do anything last year. So some people immediately saw the numbers, and I won't lie, the sticker shock got me a little bit. It was a little bit more than what I thought. The deal is really, it's 2 years, $9.5 million. It's basically a 1 year, $5 million deal, and then we'll see. Hardy, there's some interesting pieces here where I think, if you just go Google like what his stats were last year, you get this idea that, oh my God, we just signed a guy that had 2 catches for 13 yards. Well, yeah, he was hurt. He didn't play. The year before, he actually put together some really, really interesting metrics. So this list that you have here shows the yards per route run for every receiver in the NFL with a minimum 150 routes run over the last 3 years. And this shows you why the analytics crowd is so excited about this. The top 5 receivers are Amon-Ra St. Brown, Tyreek Hill, A.J. Brown, Deonte Harty, and Devontae Adams. That's a ridiculous list to be on. And again, that's showing potential, efficiency, explosion. That's not to say he's not in that category with those guys. He's still going to be like a number 3, number 4 receiver for the Bills. But this is, again, showing a player that's young, has potential for upside, in better usage of where he can play. He hasn't played with good quarterbacks. He's played with a really weird situation down there. But when he's gotten the ball, he's incredibly explosive. I think Eric showed he might be number 1 in yards after catch per opportunity over this stretch. So some really strong chances for a guy that, I don't think that either of us thought incredibly highly of, but was someone that is interesting to add into the mix here.
Yeah, I am still sort of just unsure of this one, right? Like, one, I think it's a win. I think it's an upgrade over Isaiah McKenzie. I think this fills the role. I was big on Tank Dell being a target in the draft here, and I think similar to me is, hey, let's maybe reset / upgrade this, what we thought Isaiah McKenzie's role should be. And I think this does that fine. So for that, I'm happy. I think where I'm torn is I see a lot of excitement, like you said, from the analytics community, from Eric. Eric's probably the football mind that I respect the most. And he's very excited about this guy.
Yes. Surprisingly excited.
Yeah, but for me, I'm a little torn on, and I don't want to lump Eric in with these other folks I'm about to talk about. Is I'm also seeing a lot of people just.
I didn't hear this from Joe, but Elizabeth put in his comment saying he's tiny, he's really small, he's so microscopic, no one can get a hold of him. That's kind of
funny. I mean, he can hide in there a little bit, but there's a whole group of people that immediately see just like the small shifty with the big plays that are getting retweeted, the highlights, and saying, we've got our Tyreek Hill. This is our Tyreek Hill. And that is such a dangerous, sloppy, lazy game to play. I don't like it at all. I think it puts too much pressure on a player. What I'm interested in this offseason is seeing who he's going to be and putting some legitimate expectations to it, because it is fun. It is exciting. You see explosive plays. Your mind then says, hey, if we can just take those explosive plays and multiply them, and it will translate into open up the offense exactly as we wanted. It doesn't always work out like that. So I'm interested to see. And I keep coming back to Greg. My biggest thing with all weapons that this team adds, no matter where they are this offseason, is that's cool. You got a speedy, shifty guy. Can Ken Dorsey get him involved and get him the plays? Because he got his production not on a ton of targets in New Orleans. There was like 2 target games, 3 target games, 4 or 5. That's manufacturing specific targets for a guy. We know that smart coaches can do that. I don't know that Ken Dorsey, we didn't see him do it in the playoff game where you had James Cook playing hot and he couldn't manufacture that dude some touches when your offense was limping. He couldn't manufacture Dawson knock something. Deonte Harty's, that's cool. I'm glad there's upside, but you're throwing this guy in as a 4th wide receiver option. We can't get the other 3 guys utilize them and get them any looks. So I'm having a tough time getting excited for weapons that I see could be utilized. And I see the vision for how they could be in this offense when I haven't had the proof that Dorsey can do this consistently and get those guys. I'm hoping that's the improvement we see from the offense here this offseason, but it'd be something I'm definitely tracking so where I can gauge what my expectation of this wide receiver 4 with him as that Gadget, because I do think there's more than McKenzie here. Mm-hmm. There's more ability you can do. I don't think he's as limited of a player. You're going to have to find manufacture this guy some touches to get what you want out of him.
Yeah. A couple questions in the chat here. I do think that we see a split. I think that we see Nyheim Hines as the kick returner, and we see Deonte Harty as the punt returner. I think that's how we'll split that role. And Nyheim Hines has been the best kick returner, and that Harty has been an all-pro punt returner. So it's a really good way to split that. It makes total sense. And you can tell there are incentives in Harty's deal specifically on his average punt return. So that's obviously what they're expecting.
Not muffing punts? Can we make sure?
Yeah, that would be great. Not muffing punts would be helpful. A lot of his production on offense has been, he actually does run a more, I think, developed route tree than some fans realized. He also was very good in the screen game. And again, like you said, that's not something we've seen so far from Dorsey. So I'd really like to be able to see that further develop. Yeah. So we'll see. I think that Khalil Shakir will be a name that we hear of. I think that on draft day, that'll be something that we hear of. I won't be shocked if they still bring back invited Jamison Crowder for a camp invite and tryout kind of thing. Not any guarantees. We will have a decision on Isaiah McKenzie by tomorrow. He has a bonus due. So that decision
Crowder
is coming soon here.
Be a practice squad guy now that that's opened.
Yeah, absolutely. We saw that with with Duke Johnson last year in the running back room. Right. That could be where Jamison Crowder is from a career development standpoint. He could be a
hang out and see what
kind
happens.
of insurance policy around the team in the room. And I'd love for Deonte Harty to spend time with him. And I've almost done it twice already. For any fans who aren't familiar with the name, he had been referred to as Deonte Harris throughout his life and his career. I thought it was kind of a cool gesture. His stepfather raised him throughout his life, and he wanted to honor that. And so he legally changed his name to his stepfather's name, which is Harty, instead of his birth name, which was Harris.
Not a big difference, but
no, but a really cool gesture. I think
yeah.
that's really cool when people do that. Wanted to honor the fact that his stepfather was the man who raised him. So
Mhm.
he legally changed his name to Deonte Harty to honor him. And that's why some fans, not that Deonte Harris was a huge name, but that was a name that people had heard of. They might have seen it on the All Pro roster as a returner. He was a free agent. He was very young. So like when he re-signed for 1 year last year in New Orleans, he was a guy we were looking at. And now seeing him here, that's why some people may not be as familiar with him.
Yeah.
We then saw a couple more smaller moves. We saw Tyrel Dodson and Dane Jackson both retained. Dodson signed a 1 year deal. Dane Jackson, it's interesting, was initially tendered as a restricted free agent, but then Bean made a comment that now we need to bring him back for less than the tender. So I didn't want to tender him because I wanted him back for cheaper. So I'm really interested. So what Bean said makes sense to me in what I want. I have no idea why Jackson would be okay with it. that they stopped him from being a free agent, but now want him back cheaper than the restricted free agent tender. So
It might be the market might not be there.
Correct,
What's the available? I mean, cornerback market's not moving either,
No.
like a lot of these others.
So either way, I said from the beginning, I'm happy to have Dane Jackson back. The restricted free agent tender is 2.6 million. I didn't want to pay him 2.6 million. I was fine giving him a touch more than the minimum. If we need to give him 1.25 or 1.5 million, sure, that's fine. He's a good cornerback 4. Like, you don't want him as a starter, but he's good quality depth. Has experience. I'm fine paying him $1.5 million. So it sounds like that's what we're going to see from Bean's comments today. It sounds like he will be retained, but not for that amount. Again, Tyrel Dodson, I think he's shown good ability on special teams. He's a depth linebacker. The couple games where we lost Tremaine Edmunds, he showed very clearly, in my opinion, that he's not a starting caliber player. But he was the first guy in to get a chance when Edmunds went out. So right now, I would say all things equal, he probably would get the first rep over Terrell Bernard or Balin Spector. Obviously, those guys have a little more trajectory upside from their draft profile, and this just being their second year, I don't expect any of the three of them to be starting, but it's all possible.
Yeah, I think the team is higher on Tyrel Dodson than I am. I agree with you that I think he's probably a below average guy. But this is a point that I made again in our Cover One DM group earlier. The Bills have throughout the course of McDermott's career here, whether it's due to injury, whether it's due to guys stepping up or not playing well, they have started a bunch of below average starters at key positions and played well and patched together really good defensive performances. So it's not ideal. I think that they'll be able to do it. He's one of those guys, though. Again, I think it maintains the floor of.
I might have lost Aaron again there for a second. I do think that what we've seen is there's a limit to what some of those guys have done. I know we had hope for Jaquan Johnson, and even some guys that Joe Biscaglia is a really knowledgeable guy who covers the team. He was a huge fan of Jaquan Johnson, was calling him a priority extension guy because of his starting potential. Well, when they went to start him, we saw that his athleticism was so limiting that they could take advantage of him. He could not go sideline to sideline. He could not close on some of the plays that needed to be taken care of. So I think Tyrel Dodson is the same thing. I think Tyrel Dodson is a perfectly fine roster caliber player. I think he deserves a shot to be in the NFL. I think that he's a solid reserve and can play special teams and can step in for a pinch. I don't think he's even below average starting caliber. I think that he's a replacement level player. I think that he's not a starting caliber player in this league. So we'll see where that goes. Maybe he surprised me. Maybe he proves me wrong and shows the ability to, take care of the kind of player that, we would want to see in that role, but I don't expect it. I don't think that's going to be the case. But again, if they lined up at minicamp tomorrow, he probably would be the first guy in there. So we'll see where that goes. The next bit of news we saw was just a swap at the backup cornerback position. And actually, our fantastic producer, Chris, reminded me that we actually have lost 2 players with Case Keenum being the second one here and Tremaine Edmunds, but we've gained 3 because I wasn't counting Kyle Allen. So for the compensatory pick formula, we actually swapped this out. So we've lost Tremaine Edmunds and Case Keenum. We signed Deonte Harty, Connor McGovern, and Kyle Allen. So Kyle Allen is our new backup quarterback. This was predicted by lots and lots of people because he's genuinely one of Josh Allen's best friends. They lived together in the summer when they were working with Jordan Poyer. Kyle caddies for Josh when he does like the celebrity pro-am tournaments, and they play golf together all the time. He was fine as a backup in Houston. Is he the best guy we could have gotten? No, there's probably guys who are actually better. Do any of them really matter because none of them are Josh Allen? No, I don't really care. If anybody else comes in, they're not Josh Allen. If Josh Allen is lost for an extended period of time, it's not really going to matter. It's the exact same urgency that Kansas City has shown. They don't have backup either. They lost Chad Henne, who retired, who wasn't any good either. You just have a guy who can come in and kind of keep the seat warm until Josh is back. Would I prefer that we had a Jacoby Brissett, or I know you brought up Marcus Mariota? Yes, I would have. But if this guy's cheaper and it's one way to add one more effective player at another position, the difference of having one of those guys as the backup and paying, the go-in rate, which is like $6, $7, $8 million for one of those guys, I'd rather have Connor McGovern and Kyle Allen than have Jacoby Brissett, but no starting left guard.
Yeah, this is I don't care at all about Kyle Allen.
Wait,
really
who do you care more about, Sam Martin or Kyle Allen?
Sam Martin. I hope I see more Sam Martin this year than we do. Kyle Allen.
A lot more.
No, I don't know. The only thing that I don't love about this is I'm happy as Josh's friend. They can golf and do all that crap together. Josh has a lot of friends. Like I get like
Matt Barkley's here because he's his friend.
Yeah, and
who's the receiver? Who's the Wyoming
Ken Dorsey's
receiver?
here because he's his friend. Yeah. If we're being frank about it, I don't know. It's fine. It's whatever. But my thing is,
who's the practice squad receiver from Wyoming?
Oh, Tanner Gentry.
Tanner Gentry was here because he's Josh's friend.
Yeah.
Like Josh has a whole payroll going.
Yeah, and I get it. He's the guy. He gets to do that kind of stuff. But whatever. My biggest kind of beef with this is I think if you had the same situation arise where Josh hurts his elbow, hurts something, I don't feel confident he's the guy that can go through a 3-week stretch. Not that I felt great with Case Keenum, but I will say in the last year and a half, I feel worse about Kyle Allen than I did about Trubisky or Case Keenum.
Trubisky was
to give us a 2 to 3 week run if needed. To me right now, if Kyle Allen has to play any football for the Bills, I don't see the Buffalo Bills being able to win football games with him. And that's I get it. Like, backup quarterback sucks. If Josh Allen's not playing, we're pretty much screwed anyway. It would be nicer to feel like you had a chance if something happened to Josh.
Yeah, and I don't know. I'm a tiny bit torn. He's thrown 26 touchdowns in the NFL. That's not nothing. 63% completion percentage. Like, he's had some experience. Like, he's done some things. He has, he had a season where he started for Carolina, 3,300 yards, 17 touchdowns, 16 interceptions. Like, I think that there's at least some moments that there's a reason he's been in the NFL for 5 years, and this will be his 6th year. But he's,
it's also 4 teams and 6 years.
He's not good. I'm not making the case that he's good. I do think that he's a legitimate difference of, like, why didn't we just keep Matt Barkley? I think he's a little bit better than that. Sure. I think he's a little bit more athletic than that. And again, all those guys who are just not Josh Allen, I would have preferred. I thought that your point on Mariota went a long ways for me, that he was kind of like that next Trubisky, the guy who was a really high draft pick, was supposed to be good, didn't really pan out, but maybe could still be a higher level backup. I would have preferred Darnold. I would have preferred a couple of those guys, but ultimately,
We go as Josh goes anyway.
Correct. We're going as far as Josh goes, and that just is what it is. So the final move that we've seen really did help bring my spirits around. The Buffalo Bills retained all-pro safety Jordan Poyer for 2 years. I said it a lot on a lot of different shows, including ours. The one chance to keep Jordan Poyer, everybody had wrote it off. Everybody knew he was liking tweets about, playing on the Dolphins or the Cowboys or the Giants or the Raiders. The one chance was he went out there and tested the market. The offers were softer than he expected. They were lower than he expected, and that they were in the ballpark of what it was to stay with the Bills, and that I didn't think he was going to leave for the same money. If he left, it's because he was going to get somebody was going to offer him $12 and a half, $13 million a year. He was going to get his big final contract and go play for that. Especially when the Dolphins traded for Ramsey and gave Jalen Ramsey $17 million. I think it took that last big money deal off the table.
Yeah.
And that if he was going to sign it at a discount, he was going to do a discount here. And we haven't even seen the numbers yet. I know we have some idea of where I think they fall. I bet it's going to come out as like a 2-year, $16 million deal. That's $8 million. First year cap hit like $4.5 or $5 million is my guess. Maybe some incentives that can push it higher. But if he was going to play for $7.5, $8 million a year, it was going to be in Buffalo. And it is. We have our captain back. We now have the chance to have Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer both back healthy. If you give me healthy, full 1.5 recovered Trey White, second year with the confidence and abilities now of Kyer Elam, Taron Johnson in the nickel, Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer, like you said, I'm a lot more comfortable with who we have at middle linebacker with those 5 behind them.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope I don't get paused and freeze again here when I try to make a point.
I'll jump in. I'll be ready.
Yeah, be prepared. Something's up tonight. This to me, it was so crazy because I had that glimmer of hope. I had the same idea that you did, that there really could be a way this safety market works out real well for the Bills, especially with his age, especially with the sort of idea around him that he's injured, and which is kind of crazy because up until last year, he really had such a great stretch of playing totally injury-free football and being really an Iron Man at his position. And then he gets a couple of injuries, and he spoke about it today that like he probably should have been resting. He probably should, but he felt that pressure from the mafia, from people saying, "Oh, the Bills are 6-0 when Jordan Poyer plays," and the pressure to play with the young players that were already being put in the position to play because Micah Hyde was out. He felt an unbelievable amount of pressure to get out there and play. And so he was playing through injuries he probably shouldn't have been playing through, which you saw a bit of a dip in his production this year because of that. I don't expect Jordan Poyer to be the player he was 3 years ago, but I don't expect how low he was playing towards the end of the year last year. I don't think that is who Jordan Poyer is for the remainder of this contract. I think he's going to come in rejuvenated. And this really probably played out the best case scenario for the Buffalo Bills, because one of the reasons Jordan Poyer is who he is, and he's got that dog in him, and everybody talks about what type of player he is. This dude has just chips all over his shoulders. And it's sort of what I think he took into free agency of like, I'm going to go get my money. And now I think he went out to free agency, and if it was me and I'm the type of guy who I think Jordan Poyer is, he probably took it a little bit personal that he didn't have the offers out here that he thought he did. And I think he's going to go out and try to prove something, not only to the Bills of not giving him the offer in the first place, but to the rest of the league that sort of slept on him this last time. And so I think this is a great opportunity for the Bills to get him back on a deal, and also get him back with a little bit of a chip on his shoulder here for the last 2 years of this deal.
I think it's a perfect combination. You're going to hear that a lot from us as we go forward here, that it's kind of nice to be back under the radar. It's kind of nice that people are like, "Oh man, what are the Bills going to do to keep up with what's going on?" When really, we're still better than those teams. Like, yes, were the Dolphins and Jets aggressively making moves to try to catch up? Yes. Have they closed the gap to some extent? Absolutely, yes. They are both better. Are they better than the Bills? No, they're not better than we are. It's still an incredibly good team that now tons of people are writing off. That people are all trying to put in bets on the Dolphins and the Jets to win the division and counting us out completely, putting us way below the the Bengals and the Chiefs.
I prefer this
and
to
all those
last
other teams.
year.
This is great. This is
This is way
exactly
better
what
than
I want
last
to be.
year.
It was
Yeah.
so uncomfortable last year with everybody picking us to win the Super Bowl and everybody picking us to, be the best team in the league and home field advantage and the number 1 seed. And we still have basically the same team as that from last year. And to one of our closing comments here, a guest that's going to come on next week used to be with PFF, now is actually branched out on his own, doing analytics in a really cool newsletter that I've signed up for. Kevin Cole, he's doing this analysis going through the improvement in like NFL, the impact of different talent lost and talent gained.
Right.
Funny as it is, the Buffalo Bills are dead center. Like he's basically
We stayed
said
on
that,
the 17th floor.
we're about as good
Right.
as we were. Like we've added enough little pieces that it offset the loss of Tremaine Edmunds, but we also we re-signed Poyer, we re-signed the other pieces. We are right there, about as good as we already were. Well, if you look, I mean, the Bengals, I know there was a lot of attention on them signing Orlando Brown. Well, they lost 6 other starters, including Von Bell and Jesse Bates.
I was going to say it's starting safeties.
Yeah, some multiple bigger pieces. The Chiefs, lost Frank Clark and Juan Thornhill and multiple other like legitimately important pieces.
That's not a loss for them.
Yeah, and I think that they each made a couple splashy name moves, but they added Jawan Taylor while losing 6 other starters in other spots. And those things add up over time. And I think that it's just interesting to see this. And I'm excited to have Kevin on next week to kind of talk through some of the logic and where the other pieces are. And, the comment here, the cap is a real thing and that, difficult choices have to be made. And that, it's going to be interesting to see that this kind of helps bring into focus where some of those shifts are. And you can see the teams like the Texans and the Bears. I actually think the Texans, you can tell when the bar is so low how hard that is or how easy it is to move the needle. And then you look at teams like the Eagles, or heck, the Ravens haven't been able to do anything because they're trying to figure out what the heck's going on with Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
But the Eagles, after their Super Bowl run, they lost a ton of players. And that's just how this is going to work. And the Buccaneers, obviously a big piece of that is losing Tom Brady, but also multiple other players that they've not been able to retain.
Yeah.
No, just an interesting look, and excited to have Kevin on next week to talk a little more about it.
I'm excited for that as well. And it's a great way to look at it. And it just something I've been texting back and forth. You and I have talked about it. Again, I let off the show with it that the vibe around this team is not where this team actually is. This is a team that is much closer to the Super Bowl than the kind of current vibes on them feel. Both locally at a fan base level and at a national level. I think you've seen a lot of national reporters pull off and can they get it done? Can they get all these things? And I do think that they're a lot closer than everybody feels like they are. One thing I want to talk about, Greg, I put out a tweet earlier. We see all the time slogans, all these things. And when I was listening to Jordan Poyer talk, I loved his press conference, his excitement to be back, but he kept talking about like unfinished business and I froze again.
No, you're okay.
Oh, okay. It looks frozen on my side, like it's about to freeze. So I hope it doesn't. But he talked a lot about Super Bowl caliber, unfinished business, wanting to get that done here. My thing, their slogan this year should be "Prove It." We've seen Super Bowl caliber, we've seen playoff caliber, we've seen find a way, we've seen all these different things to get to being a Super Bowl caliber team. Now I want that last chip on their shoulder to everybody to look in the mirror. Sean McDermott, Brandon Beane, Ken Dorsey, all these guys. Jordan Poyer, prove it. Stop talking about it. Stop talking about the Super Bowl, what our goals are. I don't want to hear about in Josh's head what the Super Bowl parade is. Go do it. Go get that step. Steph's the only one talking about it. What's wrong? What have we done? Let's go do it. I really want them to have that mindset of we're not talking about it anymore. This is the year to prove it. And that's what got me excited about the way Jordan Poyer was talking in his return is I think they understand getting him back is it's hard with that salary cap to retain your guys. And I think they will rally around getting him back and try to be the ones that prove it this year.
Yeah. And I think, so I think one of the guys here, Grant, was asking, how do we feel about proclaiming McDermott as a defensive play caller? I love that pressure on him. I love adding that pressure to Sean McDermott. One, he's been a more aggressive defensive play caller than Leslie Frazier historically. I love the fact that he's going to have that. I like the fact that the pressure is on him and that he's going to have, expectation to be able to perform in this spot and to do some things with it. And I think that's going to be really interesting to go through there. And we'll see where those things come from it. And one other spot that we've seen a little bit of discussion here, I was just looking, there's a $250,000 bonus on Isaiah McKenzie is one of the other things that came from McDermott's Bean's press conference. And that decision is coming up here in the next couple days. It's the fifth day of the league year, which Wednesday was the first. So Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So on Sunday is when that bonus is due. The exact quote from Brandon Bean was, "Love Isaiah. He's been great for us. Yeah, we're talking internally about making sure we don't have too much duplicate, but I think we'll know here in the next couple of days."
Yeah.
If I was the person being talked about there, I would not feel super good about my future with the team. So we'll know by Sunday.
By Isaiah,
I think there's a possibility he could reduce that number to try to stay with the team. I've heard a couple people talk about maybe could we flip him for a late round pick. I don't think there's. I don't see he has that market in the NFL, but you never know.
It's not a great time. It is not a great time to be a not productive, undersized, fast wide receiver in the NFL because there's these guys like they just got in Deonte Harty that have at least have the idea that they could meet what you want them to do in that role, and then this draft is actually full of that. Undersized, fast guys. That the league seems to be full of that. So if you haven't caught on by year 8, 9. There's just not a lot of value out there for those guys.
I will say, maybe one of the spots is.
Can they just get Richie James back?
Can they take McKenzie and we take Richie James? Can we just do that?
I don't want more.
Yeah, we just signed Hardy. Like we're good.
Yeah, we got
all the way
full
more on little scrappy. And you want to Khalil Shakir is not that big. He's bigger than that. Khalil Shakir is 6 foot. So you want to know what? I gotta correct myself here. I gotta check myself. I just said he's not that much bigger. Khalil Shakir is 6 inches bigger than Deonte Harty and 5 inches bigger than Isaiah McKenzie. So he is bigger. That's not even fair. Khalil Shakir is a full-size normal. He's the same height as me. Like Khalil Shakir is as tall as I am. So we'll see where that goes. I will say that the one comment here, I think there's a chance McKenzie significantly reduces that deal or maybe gets released and gets brought back on a minimum deal to try to make the team. And that's fine. I don't,
people like him.
Is welcome back on a minimum deal to try to make the team. I will sign everybody to that because that doesn't move. It doesn't change anything. It doesn't cost any money. No. And if they make the team, God bless them. Cool. Good for them. We can't pay him $2.5 million. That is not
and
that
good vibes don't cut it anymore.
Yeah,
the good vibes.
Good vibes ain't worth $2.25 million. All right, any final thoughts here before we wrap it up?
Yeah, no, I feel pretty excited. I know that it's not sexy free agency, but I think it's been methodical. Bean's approach to this has been methodical in trying to fill. I think they've attacked some needs. They've filled some holes. Just like we know they like to do. And I don't think they're done. I agree with Brandon Bean that they're still on the phone trying to make some calls here. I think they're going to fill some more things going into the draft. And this is the best part of draft season for me, Greg, is I really don't love doing mocks. I did a couple leading up to a free agency, but none of them are really relevant now. A bunch of stuff has changed where I wouldn't have taken half the stuff they did. So really draft season, even though I've done work on it, and I know the guys more than I did when the off season started. Now draft season really ramps up for me now that you know the holes and you can really pinpoint some of that process more. So this is where I'm getting excited for the content we're going to be making here in the future of now we got a better understanding what this team is leading into the draft. And that's what makes the draft fun is we've really refined that process to narrow down on some guys. I'm excited to find where we land on that.
Yeah, and I think that it's going to be interesting. We're going to see a little bit more here in the next week or so. I mean, I actually am scanning Twitter while we're talking here to see if anything happened while we were on. I know running back is still a spot there. We have not seen anything with Devin Singletary.
27.
We're
going to fight this offseason at some point. God.
I wanted Deontay Foreman bad. He was a really good fit. And it makes me even more mad that Aaron I just drew a blank on his name. The reporter down in Houston,
Wilson,
Aaron Wilson. reported that the Bills were one of the final teams in on Deonte Foreman, and instead he chose, the Bears lost David Montgomery, and he's going to have a chance to come in and have a bigger role. So I respect it, but man, that would have been such a nice fit. And Bean talked about wanting a guy who was a, kind of trait alternative to Naheem Hines and James Cook, which that's exactly what Deonte Foreman was. So we'll see. There are some other names still out there, Dearness Johnson, Kareem Hunt, some other players, but I do think that maybe running back is going to be in play for the draft a little bit more. Same idea. We rattled off some of the linebacker options earlier. I don't think it'll be Bobby Wagner, but I'd love to see Drew Tranquill. I'll be fine if it's a Band-Aid with Denzel Perriman, Anthony Walker, Deion Jones, one of those kind of players. But also now your mock drafts, get ready for the name Jack Campbell, people. You're going to see an awful lot of Jack Campbell. He's also 6'5" and a really good athlete, blew up the combine out of Iowa, was the Dick Butkus Award winner for the best linebacker in college football. Just checks a ton of boxes. He's going to be, mocked to the Bills an awful lot. So we'll see where those things go. But like you said, now all of those mock drafts will start to make more sense now that we know what spots are still here. And hopefully we see a couple more signings. I'd like to see a swing tackle signing, a competitive guy sign there. I'd like to see a linebacker. I'd like to see a running back. I want to go into the draft with no holes, and we simply take the best players available wherever they are. There's still some defensive tackles that I'd like to bring in. I'd be fine with that. Rotational defensive ends. There's still a lot of the veteran guys are still out there. So we still have some names out there. They're going to bring in more talent than what they have right now, but I wouldn't expect more. I think it's going to be more value signings, not big time ones.
Yeah, until they make that splash trade that I've been predicting that Bean's going to not be able to control himself from making. So other than that big splash trade, I agree with you. It'll be small stuff.
So a couple more things for everybody who's here. We have a ton of people still watching. Please press that like button. It goes a long ways. Help us out. Give us a like, give us a rating, give us a review. Couple fun things coming up tomorrow night. We got a double header. Chris and Adam and Anthony are going to be there with another Cover One hockey watch party starting at 7. You can then jump right into the Greg Tompsett Sports Show at 9 o'clock. I'm going to have Joe Marino and Brad Spielberger from PFF and formerly of Over the Cap. We're going to do reactions to league-wide signings. So not Bills focused, but across the league, looking at all the different signings, making fun of Aaron Rodgers, all kinds of fun stuff like that. Make sure you come have some fun with us. Aaron, what do you have going on this fine weekend? Are you celebrating St. Patrick's Day?
We are a little bit. We got some friends coming over.
Nice.
Some friends in town as well. So we got multiple groups of friends coming over here this weekend. So I'm going to be cleaning my house, getting ready. Kids are off from school tomorrow. It's a superintendent day on St. Patty's Day. So I'm stuck with my kids. So I don't know, Chris, producer Chris here and I have been talking about whether or not we're going to be able to do spaces. I don't trust my children to let me just talk on the internet for an hour uninterrupted. So it might be tough. Maybe not doing some spaces, but I plan on hanging out with friends, watching some golf, and hopefully the weather stays. Western New York has had a couple of days of some sunshine, and it's teasing me that spring's on its way, and I hope it stays that way because I need some of the sunshine in my life, man.
Yeah. We'll see where that goes. Appreciate the chat was awesome tonight. You guys were great. Really looking forward to this roster and this team coming together. We're going to see a couple more different signings and additions here. You guys can trust that we're going to see a couple more names. So they're not going to be big star names. Maybe there's some interesting pieces that could be. I like the kind of player that the Bills are going after here. And I've made comments that if you're looking for, still some youth, not a lot of wear on the tires, limited opportunity, but upside beyond what they've had an opportunity to do with their former team, keep an eye on Dearness Johnson from Cleveland at running back. Keep an eye on Drew Tranquill from the Chargers at linebacker. I think those are guys who haven't had a chance to really do a lot yet. I haven't seen Cameron Fleming sign yet. That was a tackle that I was interested in. That could be our new Ty Nsekhe kind of guy as a swing tackle. I still think there are some guys out there to be able to be had. So we'll see where those things go. But really looking forward to this team coming together and talking about it with you guys all off season long.
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, thank you. Big shout out to our awesome producer, Chris Kepner. On behalf of Aaron Quinn, I'm Greg Tompsett. You've been listening to Cover One Buffalo, and we